Did you know that jobs like cigarette testers existed? The 1970s saw America's rapid industrialization and significant technological advancements. Numerous jobs existed, but they were mostly manual, unlike today. Imagine being an industrial smokestack cleaner or a radioactive material transporter without safety gear. Let's delve into the 21 crazy jobs from the 70s that no longer exist, thankfully. Stay with us here on Days Gone By, a channel where we reminisce about the good old days. Number 1. Asbestos mining. Asbestos was common in the 1960s and 1970s. By 1973, America's consumption of asbestos was a whopping 804,000 tons. Asbestos is a natural mineral, and everyone valued it then for its durability and heat-resistant properties. It also helped in the insulation of buildings and other industrial processes. The miners were exposed to fine fibers which, when inhaled, led to serious health issues like mesothelioma, cancer of the lung cavity lining, lung cancer, and asbestosis, scarring of lung tissue. Over time, research established that exposure to asbestos led to these fatal diseases. Growing awareness pushed governments to regulate asbestos use, and in the 1980s, strict laws reduced asbestos mining. By the early 2000s, most governments had banned the use of the mineral. Number 2. Chainsaw logging. In the 1970s, chainsaw logging was a necessary yet risky job. The loggers had to cut down trees manually, which was physically tiring and dangerous. You had to have a bullseye kind of accuracy, as the chainsaws were super heavy and you needed crazy concentration to control them. Back then, safety was not something anyone took seriously. These guys worked without safety gear, making the job even more deadly. The loggers risked trees falling on them or injuries from the chains. But what choice did they have? In later years, automated machines took over and made work easier. The machines cut trees more efficiently and safely, ensuring humans avoided severe or fatal injuries like before. Number 3. High voltage power line installer. In the 1970s, there were some pretty wild jobs. A high voltage power line installer would strap on a harness, wear good old metal boot spikes, and climb up the massive electricity poles. Imagine climbing hundreds of feet up dangling on a harness that could easily give in to your weight. To make matters worse, you were working with live high voltage wires that could instantly fry you to a crisp. The type of weather didn't matter, as these guys had to brace the elements and get the work done. They were up there for hours, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, building the grid one power line at a time. They carefully connected the power lines, tested the voltage, and ensured everything was good to go. They not only had to avoid electrocution, but also ensure that they did not get entangled in the wires. It was a dangerous job, but it had to be done. And thanks to these brave workers, people got connected to electricity. Number 4. Coal gas workers. In the 1970s, coal gas was used to heat and light homes. Being a coal gas worker was a physically demanding and dangerous job. The guys had to shovel the coal into furnaces, enduring the thick black smoke they emitted, and the men were often covered in soot at the end of their shifts. The miners breathed in fumes all day, every day. Being in the furnaces was also risky, as the gas could explode at any minute. One spark and the furnace could light up like the 4th of July. They also had zero breathing gear and often suffered from black lung disease. After years of inhaling the smoke, the coal dust built up, scarring their lungs and making breathing almost impossible. Number 5. Lead paint manufacturer. Back in the 1970s, people didn't know much about a lot of stuff like we do today. When painted on walls, lead paint would last for what seemed like a lifetime, and everyone swore it was the next best thing after sliced bread. How wrong they were. Everyone wanted in on this secret, and manufacturers churned out huge amounts of lead paint. However, the people working in the manufacturing industry paid a huge price. They worked all day breathing in the lead dust. They also mixed the lead into the paint by hand without protection. When the workers started getting sick, investigations showed the culprit was the lead. Unfortunately, many workers had already succumbed to the lead toxins. Number 6. Elevator operator. Today, going up a building with an elevator only requires pushing a button. Before elevators became digital, every elevator had an operator. The operator spent the day pulling levers, ensuring no one got stuck between floors or plummeted to their death down the elevator shaft. This job needed precision and left little room for distractions or mistakes. The operator was in charge of people's lives, and they needed to ensure the elevator stopped on the exact floor, not an inch above or below. The job was physically taxing, and they had to do this all day while still being in tune with the gears and listening to any odd sound they made. The job slowly became obsolete with the digitalization of elevators, and most new buildings installing modern elevators. Number 7. Telephone operator. After the invention of the telephone, switchboard operators became an integral part of the system. The profession took many years to become obsolete, but with time, automation killed it. The switchboard operator's job required them to be quick thinkers and fast with their hands. Their work was to plug and unplug telephone connection cords on the switchboard, connecting each caller to the right person. The switchboard operators were critical and kept communication lines open during emergencies. Some jobs come with risks, and this one was risky due to electronic hazards and malfunctions. By the 1980s, computerized systems took over, allowing more effective communication. Number 8. Steel foundry worker. A steel foundry worker was among the most dangerous jobs in the 70s. Working with molten metal over 1,000 degrees is not a job for the faint-hearted. The steel foundry workers passed steel through heavy rollers at high temperatures. This job required great physical strength, precision, and teamwork. One wrong move and the molten steel could kill you in seconds. The men spent all day in the heat, dodging the spitting molten metal. With time, robotics and automated systems took over, reducing the risk to human lives and making the process more efficient. Number 9. Cigarette tester. Would you believe there was such a job as a cigarette tester in the 70s? A cigarette tester was a person employed to test cigarettes by actually smoking them. Their job was to spend all day smoking like a chimney, checking for quality inconsistencies, the draw, and the flavors. They puffed away at different types of cigarettes, making notes and recommendations. Back then, people didn't care or talk much about the health risks connected to smoking. I hate to imagine how that tester's lungs looked after several years on the job. Number 10. Smokestack cleaner. Cleaning smokestacks in the 1970s was necessary yet dangerous. The smokestack cleaners had to climb up industrial chimneys, several feet high, to clean soot debris. They did not have any safety gear, and any mistake meant plunging many feet to their death. Smokestack cleaners had to be physically fit and agile to navigate the narrow and slippery spaces on the smokestacks. The cleaners also had to endure breathing in toxic fumes, which meant most of them suffered from respiratory diseases. In those days, power plants and factories depended on fossil fuels like coal, making it necessary to clean the smokestacks regularly to reduce pollution. Automation replaced human cleaners, and robots made work safer and more efficient, which was a win-win situation. Number 11. Shipbreaker. A shipbreaker's job was to dismantle old ships. They tackled this job without safety gear, exposing themselves to hazardous materials like lead and asbestos, which caused cancer and respiratory issues. The job risked physical injury as it was physically strenuous and involved cutting through the metal using crowbars, sledgehammers, and blowtorches. Shipbreaking was common after World War II, with the decommissioning of old warships, oil tankers, and large cargo ships that needed scrapping. In the late 20th century, the introduction of technology and stricter health regulations started the decline of this profession. Today, shipbreaking is mechanized and workers have better safety gear. Number 12. Tunnel blaster. Tunnel blasters had the dangerous job of setting off explosions underground. The only safety gear they had was a helmet, a flashlight, a wing, and a prayer. The tunnel blaster would drill into the solid rock, with dust swirling in the enclosed space. They would pack dynamite into the drilled rock. It had to be just right, not too tight or loose. One of them would set the fuse. They would all run in the opposite direction, crouch, cover their ears, and wait for the blast. After the blast, they would walk back into the rubble and continue working. Number 13, railroad switchman. Before modern signaling systems were invented, railways needed switchmen to guide trains onto different tracks. This job required a physically fit person with precision and quick reflexes. It involved working near moving trains, and there was a high risk of injuries or even fatalities. The switchmen had to couple and uncouple train carriages using manual tools, adding to the physical stress and injury risks. This job was common when railroads were the main means of transportation for people and goods. Number 14, elevator installer. The mid-20th century was an era of city growth, and a lot of construction was happening. As the cities grew and skyscrapers shot up, there was a need for elevators in the buildings. The elevator installer job involved installing and maintaining the elevators. They worked hundreds of feet above ground using heavy machinery, and they faced frequent injuries from electric shocks, being crushed by heavy parts, and falling. Later, with stricter policies, there was the introduction of the ABS, automatic braking system, stronger harness, and better training, meaning the workers were safer and worked more efficiently. Number 15, ice cutters. The ice cutting profession included the dangerous job of cutting blocks of ice from frozen rivers and lakes. This profession started in the early 1800s to the early 1900s before modern refrigeration took hold. Ice cutters used horse-drawn plows and handsaws to cut out large ice blocks, which they transported to the ice houses for storage. The ice cutters had to be physically fit as they faced immense dangers with unstable ice. Accidents often happen when men or horses fell through, facing possible drowning or freezing to death. The profession died out when more people started using mechanical fridges. Number 16, lime kiln worker. Lime kiln workers worked in lime production, which was used in agriculture, construction, and other industrial processes. The kiln workers worked in huge open kilns that heated limestone to extremely high temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The workers were exposed to the scorching heat and caustic lime dust, which severely affects the respiratory system, causes chemical burns, and damages the lungs. Quicklime also highly reacts with water or moisture. Any contact of the lime with sweaty skin resulted in nasty chemical burns. The workers had no protective gear other than goggles and gloves when shoveling the limestone into the kilns. Unlike the 70s, the process today is regulated and automated. Number 17, film projectionist. A movie theater could not function without a film projectionist. The projectionist operated the projectors that displayed the movie on the screens. The job was dangerous as the films were made from highly flammable nitrate, posing fire risks. The projectionist loaded the film reels and changed them during the showings. They also ensured the film stayed in focus and ran without hiccups. The job needed a person with precision to avoid mistakes and movie interruptions or accidents. Digital projectors in the late 20th century and the introduction of non-flammable film material made the role obsolete. Number 18, linotype operators. Linotype operators created lines of text for books, newspapers, and other materials using hot metal typesetting machines. The operators typed on a keyboard, setting up molds per line of text filled with molten metal to form a slug or a solid line of type. This method was much faster than manual typesetting, but it had some risks, including exposure to hot metal and severe burns. The machines were complex and needed much care to prevent them from malfunctioning. Number 19, dangerous chemical plant worker. In the 70s, dangerous chemical plant workers faced serious risks due to chemical exposure like benzene and lead. They worked with toxic chemicals without proper protective gear. During the industrial boom, chemical production was at its peak. The workers dealt with serious health issues like skin burns, respiratory diseases, and cancer. The absence of modern safety measures made the job even riskier. However, the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, later introduced some rules protecting workers from exposure to harmful chemicals. Automation meant that robots did most of the dangerous work and kept the workers safe. Number 20, radioactive material transporter. The role of radioactive material transporters involved moving radioactive materials used in nuclear power and the medicine industry, often via train, ship, or truck. In the 1970s, transporting these materials did not involve stringent safety measures like today, and workers faced major health risks due to exposure to harmful radioactive material. The use of radioactive materials increased in the mid-20th century. As time passed, people became more aware of the harm radiation caused. By the late 20th century, the International Atomic Energy Agency and other concerned bodies set stringent safety standards for transporting radioactive materials. These included controlled routes to minimize exposure to the public and specialized labeling and packaging. Number 21. Timber rafters. Timber rafters would guide massive rafts made of logs down a river to deliver timber to markets and sawmills. This used to happen in the 19th and early 20th centuries before trains and trucks revolutionized transportation. This method worked best with large river systems like those in the US and Canada. The workers steered these rafts through rapid rivers, and the risk of drowning was a reality they had to grapple with daily. The rafts could be huge, measuring up to 600 meters in length and 50 meters in width, making them tricky to maneuver. Timber rafting started to decline with the rise of trains and trucks, which offered safer, faster, and more efficient means of transporting timber. Environmental laws in the 1970s also started regulating log rafting because of its detrimental effects on the ecosystem of the rivers. Times have changed in leaps and bounds since the 1970s. We now know so much more than we did back then. Technological advancements have been a fantastic game changer in how we do things, and automation has made everything easier and safer for us. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and share. Hit the notification bell to ensure you get a notification each time we upload a new video. See you in the next one.